Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about the person who is more likely to remain single based on research, and there's a couple of reasons why I want to make this video. First, if there are things that you can control, which some of them are, actually a good majority of them are things that you can control, it can help you to get into a relationship. And the ones that you cannot control, it can at least help you to know why it's been such an uphill battle. And so even though the video may be viewed in a negative light, that's not really my aim. It's for informational purposes. But my hope is that you can walk away with some information that can actually apply and actually help you. We're going to put both male and female points in here, but it's going to be kind of like, it's not going to be like one entire section where it's female and then it's male. I'm just going to tell you which point is more prominent for which gender. And the first one actually happens to be more prominent with ladies. Negative beliefs that if something happens to another woman, it will happen to you. And so this happens because a lot of people are protective of themselves, but also their gender. It happens. But what actually happens is generally never married women. So this is about 67%. And then divorced women is 66%. Were significantly more likely than married women to believe that what happens to women in general affects their own outcomes. And so interesting enough, people will think, okay, well, maybe that's just because they're not in a relationship. Interesting enough, though, the contrast is widowed women who also lost they're no longer in a relationship. They actually resemble married women's responses, suggesting that social and economic ties of traditional marriage, to some extent, shared beliefs with a spouse, etc., may shape attitudes differently and can also predict outcomes as well. And so what does this even mean? What it means is that if a woman, for example, let's just give an example, she sees something on TV where something dangerous happens to another woman, and she subconsciously thinks, okay, if this can happen to her, it can happen to me. Yes, it can, but to the point where she is thinking it will happen to her. That is the issue with a lot of these individuals, which means they tend to come into relationships more bitter and they're more afraid. And especially with divorced women, we see 66%, a little less than never married. So they're very close, by the way. Because with married women, it's around 50, 56 approximately. And so 10% higher with those never married and divorced women. And why this is prominent is because it's potential that they are feeling like they're carrying some of that baggage, which is pushing people away. And if you are in this category where you do have these negative beliefs, if you can dial that down a little bit, you can actually increase the likelihood of you getting into a relationship based on these studies, okay? The next one is men with poor social skills or social isolation. Based on research, and all the research is in the description box, there is quite a lot. So if it doesn't fit, I may have to put it in the pinned comments as well. It does depend. Men with poor social skills or social isolation, what we've seen is that these men who tend to remain single, they actually have very small or even non-existent social networks. That was the wording in the research. And we can see they also struggle with difficulty maintaining or initiating relationships. And it can be linked to social anxiety, which is a clinical diagnosis, but we can also see limited opportunities, which is a little different. However, we see shyness is also a potential for this as well. The next one is men with unstable socioeconomic status, lower income, unemployment, unstable work. We also see where there is some research that shows economic security actually does strongly affect partnering and marriage, especially in societies where men are still expected to be the provider. The next one is actually women with strong standards for emotional labor and equality. A lot of times the reason why this can be difficult is because a lot of women come into a relationship expecting men to communicate the way they do. And it's very hard to find a man that communicates like a woman because we're different. And so this can actually create issues finding a partner that fits. And so women who expect equal household labor, emotional availability, respect, and communication are more likely to reject relationships that fall short. I'm not saying you have to put up with these things, but you can communicate and compromise. You don't have to break up. That's more of what the research is stating, because people they come from different places. Environments where men do not meet these standards, at least out the gate, some women opt out entirely of dating because they feel it's never going to happen, without realizing that there are plenty of other standards that might show the relationship outcome and the health of the marriage much more prominently than these. The next one is women who experience early family instability or negative relationships. So, higher likelihood among women who have witnessed high conflict marriage, like their parents, right? Had early traumatic or abusive relationships, either with their family, their folks, or in actual romantic relationships. The next one is that, these reasons why is it can lead to long-term avoidance of commitment and very cautious of partner selection. It can also be that you choose partners that may show up with some of these more abusive characteristics, which will make the relationship fail typically. The next one is actually men who have negative beliefs about relationships or rigid standards. So unrealistic expectations for partners. We also see cynical and hostile views about dating. And sometimes this is shaped by past trauma or rejection, actually a good percentages. And a lot of times what happens is they opt out of dating entirely. Sorry about that, throat. And so that's an example as well. The next one is that women that live in men that are living in unfavorable gender ratios. So regions where there are significantly more men than women. And this can also be for vice versa. If there are more women than men. The next one is women that are living in urban, high cost, or highly individualistic societies/cultures. Larger cities, based on research, correlate with later marriages, more lifelong individuals that have lifelong singlehood, and economic independence reduces the necessity of marriage for survival or status, okay? The next one is women that have caregiving responsibilities. Women that spend much of their adulthood caring for parents, disabled relatives. A lot of times these responsibilities can limit time, energy, and opportunities for long-term relationships. The next one is older men that have never partnered earlier. These men who, it seems like based on research, men that remain single in their late 40s or 50s that have never had a relationship, the likelihood of lifelong singleness increases and is largely due to social circles decreasing, okay? The next one is men that have experienced abuse or betrayal, divorce that they found devastating, or long-term rejection. What they end up doing is a lot of them may disengage from relationships entirely as a form of self-protection, or they may not have built up the skills to connect with other individuals in a way that can form romantic relationships. And the last one is higher education and career while attempting to find someone who is qualified in those same departments for women. A lot of times women who are higher achieving, sometimes they want to find men either equal or more to these opportunities, but that can limit the pool. So it allows for the opportunity to remain single. The research and description. I hope this video is helpful. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.